Thank you. I need a microphone. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to call to order the Board of Directors of the Mercer Island School District regular meeting on May 24th, 2018. And we'll start with an adoption of the agenda. Since I wasn't here last time, and I would like to weigh in on the student rep policy, and it's only the second reading, I'd like to suggest that we pull that off of the consent agenda so that we can pull it into a discussion. Anyone want to make a comment about that or a motion?
I move that we pull the off of the consent agenda. Let's see, let me find it here. Board Policy 1250, Students on Governing Boards, second reading.
I'll second that.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So one more item. It looks like public input is at 7 p.m. Is that intentional?
That is in light of the honorees that we are recognizing, and so it was a timing piece of what time would we get to that, because we will take a little bit of a reception break after the honorees, so it was a timing piece of will we...
Fair enough. That's fine. Thank you.
And it was posted in the newspaper that way, so I think the public has been given input, and hopefully if anyone was here at 6 to give input, you're welcome to enjoy the party and still give your input at 7 p.m. Okay, so in light of that, we do need to, so the motion you made, let me just clarify, was to pull that off of the consent agenda, but we still need to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, establish the agenda.
So moved.
I move we establish the agenda as published. Sure.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. We have an agenda. Thank you for your patience. So we would now like to move to recognition, and I will pass this off to Superintendent Koloski to direct. Thank you.
Thank you. First, we are very thrilled to be introducing to the board our new Director for Special Services, Holly and Bailey. And Holly is here with her family tonight. She has accepted the position, and it's on our personnel report. And effective July 1, Holly joins our team, and she has experience as a special education teacher, a mentor, a program specialist, and most recently as Assistant Director of Inclusive Education in the Kent School District. So Holly is here with her family, and we'd love for her to come up and introduce her family and share a little bit about herself with us.
So I just want to share that I am humbled and honored to be serving as the next Director of Special Services. I'm very thankful I have my supportive family here with me, my husband Ryan and my beautiful daughter Ellie. And I'm really looking forward to working with the entire Mercer Island team and creating equitable outcomes for students. So thank you for the warm welcome.
Before you sit down, I think your family needs to join you up there, because I know there's one of them who really wants to be on TV. Okay, Ellie, smile and wave.
It's right there. Can you say thank you? Can you wave? I'll wave for her.
Thank you, Holly, and welcome. Next, I'm going to ask the board to come forward in front of the dais as we recognize several honorees. So I have to say that every district I'm in, this is always one of my favorite meetings of the year to honor our hardworking staff and those who are also moving on into the next chapter of their lives. We're going to start with, I'm going to move this up here.
Number one.
We're going to start with our Employees of the Year, and I would like to have, I can't see him because I took my glasses off, Creighton Lowry. There he is. So a little bit about Creighton. He has taught English for 18 years at the high school and is currently our co-department chair, and he has also served as the head wrestling coach for 11 years. Principal Puckett praised Creighton as a humble professional who works with his students and all of their individuals' needs. She said she appreciates most the care Creighton has for others, his leadership among staff, and his approachable professional demeanor to all who come in contact with him. Most importantly, students love Creighton for his high energy, his passion for teaching English, and his sense of humor, most important in the classroom. He is known for his understanding about student schedules and his flexibility about turning in assignments. And each year, he holds a March Madness type Poetry Palooza contest where the winner receives a t-shirt, which is much coveted because it has Creighton's face on it. So congratulations. Thank you. Stay up here. Next, recognition is not able to be here. Jessica Steinley is our middle school teacher of the year. She has taught math at Islander Middle School since 2004, and she is a great asset to Islander Middle School. Thank you, Tracy. She's described as a math guru and is highly regarded by all of her colleagues and students, and we can depend on her for anything. She never says no, even when she should. And we are lucky to work alongside with Jessica. So she couldn't be here tonight, but we are proud to honor her. Next up is our elementary teacher of the year from Northwood, Stacy Smedberg. Is Stacy here? There she is. And Stacy has taught in our district since 2009, and she is our PE teacher at Northwood. She is described by Principal Batliner Gillette as a caring, warm, welcoming, and inclusive educator. She is diligent in her efforts to get to know each child's needs, adjusting and adapting her PE instruction and activities to make learning accessible and to engage each child's body and mind. In her environment, in that large gym, students feel safe to take risks, try new things, and discover new ways to positively engage with their peers. Beyond the classroom, Stacy is Northwood's car loop supervisor. That means she greets everyone every day, where she knows each child by name and recognizes their parents and guardians and cars by sight, but she's also learned how to greet each of them in their home language. Quite an accomplishment. Stacy's colleagues appreciate her sincere kindness, empathy, and interest she demonstrates with everyone she encounters, child or adult. She is an inspiration to her colleagues, both for the authentic relationships she builds with students and for the dedication she displays for continuous improvement in her teaching practice. Stacy is a joy to work with and a deserving recipient of Elementary Employee of the Year. So congratulations, Stacy. And now we have our classified staff of the year. First up is Tom Ham, who is our day custodian at Northwood. And Tom, unfortunately, is also not able to be here. Something to do with a furnace. Yes. At his home. Yeah, it's very sad. But if you've met Tom, you know how critical he is at the Northwood community. He maintains very high standards in keeping that campus safe, clean, high functioning, and absolutely beautiful. He is one of the Northwood. One of the Northwood staff agreements is all students are our students, and Tony, really exemplifies this idea. He has continued to build great relationships with the students. They all know who he is and scramble to help him out during lunchtime. I've witnessed that myself, and he is truly valued in the Northwood community and deserving of his recognition. Next up, classified employee is Kathleen Long. Where is Kathleen? There she is. So Kathleen is my sunshine every morning, because I go past her desk to my office, and every morning I always get a cheery good morning. She is the epitome of the face of human resources for Mercer Island. She is our human resources coordinator, and according to Erin Battersby, she is amazing, and I would agree. She wears many hats and juggles many responsibilities in her role, and over the past couple of years, she's helped 2 new people in the HR department learn more about working in HR in education while performing her own job. It's resulted in much more work than what she would normally be responsible, and she always jumps to assist. She's a bit of one of our sunshine ladies at the central office. She helps organize things like our turkey feast, and she keeps us all smiling. Kathleen knows everyone. Frequently, I can hear the conversation at her desk, and she knows every employee by name in the district, and I can hear her reassuring them on the phone calls, and she brings in the tomato plants for the staff and helps plan our fun events. And today she showed up in my door wearing a big red nose and made me smile and gave me a laugh, and that's what's really important in human resources. So thank you, Kathleen. Thank you. The red nose is because it's Red Nose Day. Next, we have Jessie Ong from Island Park. During the year, Jessie performs a myriad of duties that included working one-to-one with children who needed assistance, remedial teaching, and catching up from being absent. Principal David Hoffman says one of the most helpful talents Jessie brings is her ability to translate for students and families that speak Chinese. She helped with translating during parent-teacher conferences last fall, including emailing to make sure the family was comfortable with signing up and attending a meeting. Positivity, kindness, and patience radiates from her smiling face as she greets students in the morning and throughout the day. She makes their day better as they silently slide next to her for a hug. The Island Park staff appreciate her willingness to do any task they ask for help with, and she always circles back to complete it. Even if she's moved to another grade level, she continues to learn everyone's name and move forward. She absolutely deserves each and every day that we work with her. So thank you, Jessie. And so there we have our 2018 Employees of the Year. So photo op, we might need to squish in. Thank you all. Oh, you're staying.
Oh, we're staying.
We're staying. You're going to stand for a little while longer. Because now we are going to recognize our Mercer Island School District retirees. We have several employees, I think 12. Not all of them are here, but what's really amazing is the combined years of service. We have 249 combined years of service to Mercer Island School District, with 280 years in public education. So some pretty amazing numbers that these dedicated employees have given to service. First is Susie Albrecht. Is Susie here? There she is. So Susie has worked in education for the past 30 years, with 17 of those years being at Mercer Island High School, serving as the Fine Arts Graduation Secretary, Administrative Assistant, and 504 Planned Summer School Coordinator. Principal Puckett asked Susie what the highlight of her professional career was, and she commented on visiting with former students who would stop by to see her to thank her for time she spent nurturing them with a pat on the back or giving them a reality check in the form of a, not literal, but figurative kick in the behind when they needed it. She also commented on being most proud of the 504 students that she worked with, self-advocating as she always encourages them to do. She has a can-do attitude, helpful, supportive staff member who always puts students first. When she retires, she plans on actually coming back to visit us as a substitute, because then she can just leave the work and go home and not worry about it. She also wants to explore volunteer opportunities in diversity advocacy and child literacy. And most importantly, Susie hopes to spend more time with her 2 grandsons. She is known to them as Grammy. And after all, the most important job, and I agree with Susie, is was raising her 4 children. So congratulations, Grammy. Good luck in retirement. Next is Pam Baumler. Pam is not able to be here. She is our administrative assistant for special services, and she has served in the district office since 2009, coming to education after many years in private industry. Her plans in retirement are to spend considerable amount of time east of the mountains with her dad and her brother, who still reside there, and she hopes that she'll get to see them even more. She will be greatly missed and leaves large shoes to fill. Next is Tom Cox. Yay, Tom. So Tom was hired back in 1992. Yes, as the choral music teacher and choir director at Islander Middle School and Mercer Island High School, and he has been in that position ever since. He noted in applying to Mercer Island School District that he had 18 years of professional experience performing as a vocalist and a guitarist in Seattle area venues. Mary Jo and Aaron wrote that Tom has provided a classroom where students feel welcomed and connected. He has shown great patience and creativity in his work with students and helps students see themselves not only as performers, but also as leaders. He is accepting of all students, and his charisma and humor show in every interaction. Islander Middle School will miss his kindness, his compassion, and his talent. And at the high school, Tom will be remembered as a teacher who cared deeply about his students, both as a group and individually. His students said he makes choir feel like a family, and you see that when they perform. And regardless of their own individual talents, he treats us all as like we are each individually special. Those are the best words from your students, right? After retirement, Tom has some great aspirations, but his first priority is to turn off his alarm. Then he hopes to enjoy playing music again professionally, living life on his own terms, and traveling with his wife, as well as volunteering. Congratulations, Tom. Terry Johnson is not able to be here. Terry's been a paraprofessional in the district since 1995. She worked first at West Mercer, where her duties included playground supervision and flagging. Terry moved to Lakeridge in 2009, where she has continued in her role as a parapro. Next up is Anne-Marie Laird. Anne Marie teaches third grade at West Mercer and has been an advisor to the Destination Imagination teams there. She came to Mercer Island in 2008 after 17 years in Enumclaw School District. She began her professional career as an investment officer in Seattle and then transitioned to be an at-home mom, volunteering in her children's classrooms, and where she was encouraged to get her teaching credential to continue in education. Anne-Marie has additional passions beyond education. She is an avid glass fuse artist and plans to spend part of her time after retirement participating in this great activity. Her main passion, however, is her family. She is a devoted mother and grandmother and looks forward in retirement to spending a lot more time with her son Ryan and, most importantly, grandbabies Kaya and Aiden in Washington, D.C., and she hopes to eventually relocate there to be with those that she loves. Congratulations, Anne-Marie. Thank you. Debbie McKenzie is not able to be here. Debbie began as a paraprofessional in 1994 at the middle school and at Island Park. She then moved to the high school and served in various roles, including health room paraprofessional and attendance secretary and accounting clerk. She became the athletics activity and facilities secretary in 2011, and Principal Puckett described Debbie as serving our students and families and all their needs in the athletic office. She was a very helpful secretary who always had a smile on her face and a helpful attitude in everything she did with staff, coaches, and families. Next up is Beth Nielsen. Beth first joined Mercer Island School District as an instructional aide in 1989 and became a teacher the year later at Lakeridge in 1990. She then moved to Island Park in 1993 and has been teaching first grade ever since. Principal David Hoffman said the work displayed inside and outside of her classroom clearly reflects her philosophy of teaching. Enable children to imagine, problem solve, explore, share, and celebrate their growth and inherent greatness. She is especially adept at teaching students how to show empathy towards their peers. Throughout the years, parents have shared their respect for and complete awe of Beth's skills and student focus. She's always embraced opportunities to partner with families to support learning, solve challenges, and share successes. Beth, in retirement, is looking forward to leading the more simple life of relaxing on her deck, soaking up the sun, not too many days with that, and catching up on reading. Congratulations, Beth, and good luck. Mike Radow. So Mike was the first teacher that I met in Mercer Island School District. He joined the district in 1994 as a social studies teacher after teaching in Portland, Kentucky, and yes, Casablanca, Morocco. Mike has also served multiple terms as president of Mercer Island Education Association. Mike shared his fondest memories of teaching as being with his colleagues and attending great workshops and teaching humanities courses. He also led the efforts with his students to paint the world map that is located on the pavement in the amphitheater. Mike dedicates his lunchtime to give talks to students who are interested to learn more about his perspectives about race. He had a series this year, and he invited staff and students to hear his research. When asked about future plans in retirement, I think I asked you this question too, Mike. He says he has no specific plans right now, but he hopes to spend time in the future in South America learning Spanish, so forever learning. He also plans to spend time enjoying leisure activities like reading, hiking, gardening, volunteering with a variety of organizations, advocating for immigrant children and children in the foster care system. Forever an educator, Mike. Thank you. Cheryl Sandstrom. Cheryl began her career in the North Thurston School District and joined Mercer Island in 1989, teaching kindergarten at West Mercer, then at Lake Ridge before joining Island Park in 1992. She switched, big jump, from kindergarten to third grade in 2004, and she was Mercer Island Teacher of the Year in 2005. Principal David Hoffman appreciates her calm and her creative sense, and those are words that come to mind when describing Cheryl. She's one of the most caring and compassionate teachers, particularly at Island Park, and no matter what the challenge, Cheryl embraces each child and celebrates her or his uniqueness. She always finds the seeds of greatness in each child and helps them blossom. In retirement, Cheryl is looking forward to her well-deserved retirement with her husband, her daughter, son, and the most important, grandchildren. That's what retirement is for. They will be hiking, kayaking, enjoying the great outdoors. So congratulations, Cheryl. Rhonda Schweinhardt is a teacher at Lake Ridge since 1997. She's been teaching second grade there. She actually began her career as a preschool teacher and also as a summer day camp director for the city of Mercer Island. Rhonda leaves Lake Ridge and will be missed. Mark Schaefer. I think Mark was the second teacher I met on Mercer Island. Said you're the second teacher I met. Mike was the first. Mark is a second career educator. He came to teaching math after a long career in the U.S. Marine Corps, serving as a chief of staff for the commanding general in Hawaii. He spent some time in California, too, because we've discussed that as well. He joined Mercer Island High School teaching math in 2006 and is currently serving as the MIEA president. His students appreciate that he is prompt with feedback on correcting tests and assignments. He is a grading wizard and always goes the extra mile to help students when they are struggling, and he makes the time available to help each student, and he does an abundance of tutoring, too. He's always running off to do some tutoring. Mark has some wonderful plans for his first year of his retirement. He and his wife plan to travel around the world, traveling to 6 continents over the next 12 months, starting in July. Sounds exhausting for retirement, but good luck and congratulations. Thanks, Mark. Last up, and this is alphabetical, so there was no plan here, Jennifer. See, I didn't even have to say her last name, and everybody knew Jennifer. Jennifer will say she's not really retiring, but she is leaving public education. And she is another second career educator. Jennifer worked as an engineer for Corning in New York and for Boeing in Seattle before becoming a teacher. She joined the district in 1993 as a science teacher at Mercer Island High School, also serving as a website coordinator and curriculum lead, then a technology specialist. What a surprise. She became Director of Technology Services in 2003 and Executive Director of Learning and Technology Services in 2009. So, what does Fred say? Fred says, well, it's true that no one is irreplaceable. Next to Jennifer Wright's name is an asterisk, designating that she is as close to irreplaceable as they come. Some people have a tremendous breadth of knowledge but lack depth, and others have the depth but not the breadth. She can visit any building in the district and talk as intelligently about the curriculum, the instruction, and assessment as the fiber connection to the school and where additional conduit is buried underground if we need it someday. In fact, today I think she handed over some drawn plans for some office somewhere that yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge in there. However, what's always impressed me, says Fred, is Jennifer's relationships with students, staff, and parents. Throughout her career, she never lost sight of what matters most, the people. So thank you, Jennifer. So there you have it, 249 combined years of dedication to the children of Mercer Island. Thank you all so very, very much for your service. We appreciate it. And now, after we get a few photo ops, we'll have a little reception. We have cupcakes. We hope you all have your lovely retirement gifts. We put one on display for you. And again, congratulations. You get your picture. We will take a break and reconvene to our regular meeting at 6:50.
started in about 2 minutes. Okay, as soon as we have people take their seats, we'll get started. Okay, we'll get started after that recess. Are you ready, Jennifer? Great. Okay, so we're on to item D of our opening items, public input. Do we have any public input tonight? Okay. We'll check again at 7, just in case, since 7 was posted. So if anyone comes in, can you wave at me? And that'd be great. All right, so let's move on to full governance process monitoring language review, number 2. And item A is Board Policy 2020, Fundamental 5, 21st Century Thinking Skills, which we had a report on last time, May 10th. And tonight we're doing a language review.
May I suggest we take a look first at the item we pulled off the consent agenda, since we have people in the audience that might be able to contribute to that conversation, and then we could take care of that first.
Any objections to that idea? Okay, I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Director Jorgensen. And it looks like we have public input as well. So we can get started on actually, yes, item H from the consent agenda we're pulling up, thank you, Donna, is Students on Governing Board, Board Policy 1250. And we have both a Policy 1250 and a Procedure 1250P. And I wasn't here last time because I was traveling. And when I watched the video, it seemed like there was some vibrant discussion on the question I had raised by email about students who happen to also be students or children of board members, and whether we should consider that as a possible conflict of interest. And it sounded like there were comments on both sides of that issue, and which I appreciated all of the comments. One of the things that I wanted to ask for a follow-up would be from Aaron Battersby. If you're, you had made a few comments at the last meeting about the issue of students, but you also said you would maybe want to take a further look at it, to look at it more from a deeper standpoint, maybe from a legal standpoint. Did
Yep.
you have any further comments?
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, I didn't see that there was an issue legally. It's just whether or not the board would feel there was a look of impropriety of having your own student be a representative to a board that includes the parent, and how the optics of that also, given that. So that's really the issue, but legally there is not an issue because it is not a hired position that you are.
Okay, so you don't have any
Not a legal concern, no.
further comments based
No.
from what you had
No
before?
legal
Okay,
concern.
I wanted to give you that opportunity
Yep,
to
thank you.
express. Thank you. Did any other board members want to make a comment after further thought on this?
Yeah, I thought we were okay doing a board vote for conflict of interest, perhaps. So the idea would be it was okay if a board member's child got onto this effort, but we could also have a vote using the conflict of interest policy from board members as to then allow it to be a board combined decision to decide whether the child should be opted out or not.
And the thing I wasn't sure about that was at what point would that happen, when the student's applying, or if they were accepted, or if they were rejected, or if there was an issue after they were on the board and then there was a issue with potential removal.
I would think in something like this, it would happen before any student is accepted. So there might be a discussion around it, perhaps raised by the president and vice president if it happens to be a concern. And then the board opines and potentially takes a conflict of interest vote.
I would propose we table this issue. I don't think we have any incoming seniors, children on the board. I would propose that we table this until we see how the first year goes and see how the process works. I don't think it would be appropriate to exclude a student from an opportunity based on who their parent is. We don't do that to teachers or administrators' children. We certainly shouldn't do that for the board. They're non-voting members. But I understand the question, and I understand the appearance of impropriety, and think that we'd all be in a more educated position to comment on it after the first year, after it goes.
Just FYI, I do have a junior in
Yeah.
the school, so that
Current junior?
current junior,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that could be,
I thought it was you.
And I think there's also a sophomore amongst our group as well currently, so I think they're coming from both the junior and the senior thing, so.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think with my concern would be to address this before we're in the situation, so that there's not the look of any sort of uncomfortable awkwardness or slights that could be made at the time that the student applies. Then we start thinking about there being a conflict of interest. And one of the things we do look at, I think, is in our policy or in the RCWs, is that it can be considered a conflict of interest when a spouse of a board member is applying for a job in the district. And I think there's sort of that gray area with family. And so I think both in the application process and somewhat potentially during the time that a student would be actually sitting on the board, but especially in the case of a need to remove a student for some reason, I start to get really nervous about how that would cause some potential rift or issue between board members, and not just from the person who is the parent, but the other board members sort of dancing around feeling like, oh, I can't be honest here because it's their child. I just have some concerns about that. So I personally would rather hash it out and talk about all the different scenarios ahead of time so that it's not when a student's desire to serve on the board is on the line.
I think I'd agree with that. I think if we leave it to when it happens, then it might appear as if it was targeted and like, why would we not bring it up if certain children did it and then this one's coming up? It'd be kind of awkward. So I think it'd probably be best to address this now. I hope the audience appreciates that this is probably a pretty unlikely situation, but I think it's thoughtful for the board to discuss this. I personally, not speaking for any of my children, but I think they see plenty of me being up here. It's probably not in their ideal plans, but I'm not speaking for them.
Right, I agree that my kids wouldn't want to do it either, in that they wouldn't want to have that sense of impropriety be right on stage, on TV, and the public eye. But there could be some kids or parents that might think it'd be great, but then I would worry about there being an issue. I appreciated what Erin Battersby said about we can encourage our kids to pursue other leadership opportunities. We have a wealth of leadership opportunities, and so I don't feel like it would be harming any of our kids by saying, you know, you really should look at something else. I think also with the timing, like I appreciated Director Lurie saying that, you know, your kid may not want to do it, but also you don't know about 6 years from now. But that is a long time from now, and we have 4-year terms, and there can be, you know, if you could have a student who's like, no, I really want to do it, there can be a choice there about how long you serve and when you serve, and people can look ahead and know that would be discouraged from having a student of a person have them both be on the board at the same time. So those are my thoughts and feelings. Just wanted to express that. The other thing, and we can talk more about it, but the other thing I just wanted to note, I appreciated having Director D'Souza talk about the board president being on the selection process, and I noted that that was in this new version under application process, but I was curious if it was just an omission or if it should also be under term of office number 2 in the event of a vacancy, that the panel would that include the board president as well? Because it's the same list of people that were on this application process except for the newly added board president. So I wanted to see if that was just an omission or if that was intentional. So those are my thoughts.
And I'm noticing the clock right now, so should we just take a time out?
That'd be great. Thank you. So we'll table this conversation and we'll do public input at this time. Thank you. So, David, would you please come up and I'll read the content about public comment out loud. This meeting is a meeting of the board in public. If you would like to address the board on a particular issue, please limit your remarks to not more than 3 minutes. Appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern, and if desired, provide written documentation to the board secretary in order to be included as part of the official board minutes. The board may direct the superintendent to respond to the issue expressed at a later date. David Zaitsev, thank you.
Thank you. So I thought I would tell you my very interesting and fun story from, I think it was last Saturday, although it might have been last Sunday. I'm a very gregarious fellow. I chat with all kinds of people, and as a result, I sometimes meet some of the people in McDonald's, and I know some of the clerks, and, you know, some of the clerks are adults like the rest of us, and some of the clerks are kids in high school. Actually, know one of the kids is a clerk that's also in high school at McDonald's, and at times we talk about the schools from time to time. And you folks probably remember that, you know, a month or 2 ago, or 3 months ago, I came and I spoke about 2 issues, and then I sent you some emails, but I hadn't been back for a while. And I thought, well, I'm not sure to what degree the school board has chosen to follow up on any of my ideas, and that's really okay. You know, it's their decision. Although, if I have the opportunity and any student wishes, I'll encourage them to create a personal safety club if they think it would be useful. So that anyway, this Saturday, There is one particular student who works as a clerk at McDonald's on weekends. He's not there every weekend, at least not that I've seen, but he's some weekends. And I went in this Saturday, and he takes my order, and then we have a chance to talk, and I say, have you thought of having a personal safety club on school campus? And he says, no. And I say, well, here's why. You know, you teach the women a little bit, a few things, and might reduce the rate of rape, and that might be helpful. Then right behind me, I see two people who've just come in, and because I'm chatting with him, he would normally be taking their order. I say, I'll step back, and I'll let you take the order of these people who've just come in. So I begin to step back, and as I do so, this fellow says, what if we want to hear the rest of what you have to say? Very interesting. And so they went forward and they gave their order, and then he and I continued our conversation. And it was he and a young lady. I'm going to avoid giving his name or much other personal information. I'm not sure, you know, he shared these things with me. I'm not sure to what degree he desires them shared in a semi-public forum such as this. He apparently works for the federal government doing some counterterrorism. And we talked slightly about EAAA, which he said he knew about, and he was there with either a friend or a relative of some type who also attends a school of some type, which is a public school. We discussed run, hide, fight.
May I just
Sure.
interrupt just briefly? When it comes to sample sizes, we don't give out the statistics because we're concerned about anonymity. And you've identified certain characteristics of a person where the community could reduce it down potentially to know who that person is. And I just caution you that if you're sharing something that this person wouldn't want, to please be careful for their anonymity purposes. So that's all I want to say. Please go on.
And I'm actually going to interrupt as well. This is Erin Battersby for the district. To the extent that you're disclosing information about one of our students, I'd ask that you not do so, just because you're presenting them as a student of the district. So you've cabined it that way. So I'd rather you not discuss things specific to a student.
In any case, this fellow, as an adult, said he knew of a potential school district in which persons were not being educated in run, hide, fight. And when he learned of that situation, he looked up some videos online and he made sure to educate persons that might benefit from that education. And so it was encouraging to me. When we left, he said, keep up the good fight. He encouraged me to do what we could to learn in this area. And so I'm going to let you go. We've used our 3 minutes. We'll see you another day. God bless you.
Thank you. Superintendent Kolosky, did you want to make any comments?
None at this time.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we will close public input and go back to discussing Board Policy 1250 procedure. Is there anybody who wanted to continue talking about that?
I just wanted to say, I mean, before my suggestion was to hold it off a year, which is fine not to. I understand the reasons not to. I'm very uncomfortable with any child of a board member being treated differently than every other student in the district. I understand all the issues. It is not a legal conflict of interest. And I think that is for something for the family to decide. I feel very strongly that our children should not be treated differently, whether it's given more opportunities or fewer opportunities. They're students in the district like everyone else.
I think I'd agree with Director Lurie, and I also appreciated Principal Puckett's discussion on that as well for all the students. So just wanted to share that.
Any other comments, Brian or David?
You mentioned that you observed our discussion from last time, and I don't think it's changed from that. I agree that, you know, I wouldn't want any of our children to not have the opportunity to at least apply for or challenge themselves for that. I think it is a personal discussion with the family, and I would certainly hate to see a board member not run for a second term because they knew their child would be wanting to possibly serve as a liaison to the board for their student body. It's an advisory role. So when I think of my time in PTA, as we look to advisory roles that serve on our boards of directors that don't have voice or vote necessarily, but are there to provide perspective or information from the student body, I think that most of our students, especially in leadership here on the island, would understand that, and I would think if they were applying, would take that very seriously and truly be there to represent the student body. I get your hesitation, though, so yeah.
Thanks. David, any other comments?
While I like the intent behind Deborah's thoughts and to open this up to school board members' children, I appreciate that. I do think that there can be unforeseen issues, and allowing the board as a whole to vote at the discretion, I think, of the president, who's on the selection committee and has some view into how that's happening and if there's an issue going on, to allow that to be raised as a conflict of interest vote, I think has some merit. I think if we are thinking about this, I don't know if executive session rules might apply in a circumstance like this to have this discussion, because we're talking about an individual, and that individual is now no longer anonymous. That is a student we'd be talking about. It might be worthwhile that, or might be following the rules, that we do this at an executive session discussion, so that we don't alienate anybody.
You mean in this situation if it came up?
If a situation
right
came
now,
up.
right?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yes, sorry, not about our discussion now, but in case a conflict of interest came up, the president, or if it's the president's child, the vice president, could decide that we hold an executive session to discuss this and potentially have a board vote in executive session around it. And this way we don't alienate the child. It occurs with discretion, so that nobody is being kicked off in public or anything like that, or being allowed in public. And when the final decision is made, an appropriate statement can be made if it is a board member's child.
Okay, so Director Koloski, could you maybe answer my question about the term of office in number 2?
I think that was just an oversight so that it didn't match. We talked about the application process, and we just didn't catch that it was in
Okay.
another place as well. So that can be easily corrected and say the same thing in both places.
Okay.
May I have a point of clarification with Director D'Souza's input there. Are you, I don't know if you necessarily said this, but I'm wondering if it leads to that. If there is a child, does that kind of imply that a board member, any board member, really shouldn't be in the selection process? Because a potential conflict of interest. Because I think we spoke to this last time, or somebody spoke to it, that we have full faith in the people going through the process who aren't on this board, on that selection committee, that they will be unbiased as they have been in other processes. But I'm just wondering if you were going there? No, you weren't. Okay.
You know, I think I was happy because happy having the president on the selection committee. I think the only time you might think about stepping away is if your child is applying, if the president's child is applying. But I think in general, I was, and in general, I think, you know, as a board, I think the board deciding something like this together, if there is a conflict of interest, actually works very well for me. I trust the voice of the board, and even if my child was here, I might be biased towards wanting my child on this, and I would actually feel better if the rest of the board had a chance of opining on that and voting that they don't believe there is a conflict of interest. That would actually help me feel better about my child being on such a committee.
Okay, so I'm not hearing enough support to make any further edits to the procedure. So do I have a motion to approve as written with the edit that we discussed?
I move we approve Board Policy 1250 with the suggested edit to make the documents correspond.
And we're going to probably need to do both the procedure and the policy separately, or do you want to add to your motion that we're doing the policy and the procedure?
The motion is for the policy and the procedure.
Okay.
Sorry, this is Erin Batterjee speaking. You
Should we do
actually
them
need to,
separate?
you actually need to approve the policy and then the procedures separately.
They have to approve both because it is within the governance
But
of the board.
separately. So it has to be separately.
Okay. All right, would you like to revise your motion one more time?
The motion is to approve Board Policy 1250 with the proposed change so that the,
Actually, the
Oh, is that
procedure is
on-
the one with the edit.
okay, then the Board Policy is written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those, any further discussion on the policy? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 for policy 1250. And let's move on to the procedure.
I move we approve 1250, the procedure with the proposed change to make the board president a part of both the selection committee as well as if there needs to be a reselection.
Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, so we will return to item 2 on our agenda, Part A, Fundamental 5, 21st Century Thinking Skills Language Review. We can discuss if there are any revisions we would want to make. Any thoughts?
So I don't have the agenda in front of me. I have it buried somewhere, but we're talking about Fundamental 5, is
Yes.
that correct? So I believe the superintendent added their interpretation with leadership there, as well as added 2 indicators, new indicators for leadership in the indicators.
We selected some other questions from the EES survey
Right.
that were pertinent to leadership.
Right. So to kind of follow up with, I think, a suggestion I made that in order to kind of prevent us creating this mound of indicators continuing to grow as we just continue to add things, to be fair, perhaps we should be open to taking some indicators off. And just wondering if superintendent or had thought of any indicators with respect to this fundamental that aren't as critical, that could be save some time in preparation of the report?
Haven't really looked at all the different questions. As you can see on 5, most of the quantitative data is pulled from that same survey. So it is an ongoing piece, and those are the pieces that are actually easier to produce. It's the qualitative that is the more time-consuming component to actually any of the reports. But we do the survey every year, so pulling that data is a matter of a staff member being able to pull that and adding on the year when we add questions. When we do add questions, of course, you're not going to get as many years because we've changed up that piece of it. So when it comes to the quantitative, we haven't spent a lot of time, staff hasn't spent a lot of time looking at what could be omitted from here. It's the qualitative that is the most time-consuming part of the report.
Okay. And also, just to follow up, you probably haven't had time to hear back from EES, but I was wondering if they have the ability to renormalize their data in the future?
Fred had a conversation with them.
Yes, I'm having ongoing conversations with Greg Lobdell. I do believe we will be able to get access to they can apply their new metric to the old data, so we can now start to see it longitudinally from there. Perhaps, you know, as you're discussing or whatnot with Superintendent Koloski and what format you're thinking on that, do we want to go back to previous fundamental reports and outline them there, or, you know, we can talk about different formats for that, but being able to apply it, I don't think is going to be a problem.
I guess the context I brought that up would be for future reports when we see them, in order for us to really be able to take advantage of the data in order to see the trends. It'd be nice to get away from that bold line. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like it might be, but is that work going to fall on our district, or is it going to fall on EES?
I'm not sure yet. I think that there's probably middle ground on both, the way they can now extract the reports and send them to us. They're in different formats, which makes it actually a lot easier with less calculation, especially the way that they're doing their strongly agree and agree. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or concerns there? We don't have to take a vote if there's not going to be any changes, so are we ready to move on? Okay, so we are looking next at item B, similar item, Fundamental 6, Global Awareness and Understanding Language Review. Any comments? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Director Jorgensen.
So, very much appreciated this report last meeting. This is the opportunity for us to provide input on indicators, and given kind of the new program and new investment in the program of the Spanish language program in the elementaries, and given all these world language questions, I think all of them begin at 7th grade or later, but yet we've got world language going from K through 5 now. And it might be nice to have a metric for this program that we could follow over time. I just kind of throw that out there to either the board or to the superintendent to know, is there an interest? Are there some indicators? Is there any interest in such a thing, or has there been any thought about any indicators for the future? So, either questions of the board or questions of the superintendent, either way.
I'm going to let Fred take that one, because I know he was in with the initial conversations about the Spanish language program in elementary, and when there would even be some valid data that we would be able to reflect on.
I think in thinking about that, most of the metrics, or I believe all the metrics right now in the report, have to do with participation, not necessarily outcomes of their mastery of language or understanding of culture or other indicators. So I think the indicator for elementary I'm not sure what that's going to give you, since all students participate. It's an inclusive program for all students. It's going to be in the high 99% because we have a couple per either individual education plans or for whatever reason aren't participating in Spanish, but it's very few. The addition we could certainly make is to 6th grade. That's probably of most interest to you, now that 6th grade will have the option to take Spanish next year, if we're looking at it from a participation standpoint. If we're starting to look at other metrics about world language, then that would be a completely different conversation. But at least with your metrics now, it's whether or not they participate or not.
There is one other piece that if you are looking at a competency, and I know there was some discussion about that, there is a program that is actually a national program, and I just read a little bit about it burbling up in Washington, but it's quite prevalent in California, called the Seal of Biliteracy, which allows for students who are truly biliterate in perhaps their home language and another language to achieve that seal of biliteracy. It's quite an accomplishment, particularly for English language learners. There is some potential there to look at that program. It's not really a program that kids apply for, and there's some work with counselors in the application for it. Jennifer?
So we actually do
some of that. Yeah.
Well, we have the state has a requirement around the seal of biliteracy and has a definition for it, and so we do. There are kids, students that have that on their graduation, on their transcripts. That's recognizing a two-language.
There is a way to promote that a little bit more as well, though, where we could really get the information out to students so that those who wanted to apply could get that on their graduation and perhaps have a bigger recognition for them.
I'm looking at the fundamental as it relates, cultivate global awareness, understand real-world problems, issues, concerns, commonalities, differences, interdependence, global awareness. So I'm just wondering if there's a less, I don't know, I just looking at what the goals are for the Spanish language program. It's empathy and understanding of other cultures. I'm wondering if there's other metrics that could be there, and would they necessarily fall in Fundamental 6? I just we have this new program, and it seems like it'd be nice to work in some metrics to measure the potential impact for this, whether it's appropriate for Fundamental 6 or another fundamental.
I think some of it will be addressed by the participation level at the middle school when it's not required, and whether we see a trend over the next few years of more students choosing to take that elective at any grade level. If we're going to be having it starting in 6th, it's still an option. In 6th, it's an option. In 7th, it's an option. In 8th. And so perhaps we track that as part of Fundamental 2 with the instructional program. I'm not sure. Maybe not, but maybe just seeing the middle school elective numbers over time, that shouldn't be too difficult to gather. Would that be correct, staff?
So 7th and 8th grade should be in your report from last time. What
Okay,
would
so
be
you'd be adding
the
6th.
6th grade would be
Okay.
added since they have that.
Oh, okay, so it's in Fundamental 6. Okay.
Yeah, I think right now we're getting trends of increasing participation in the middle school, which we'd hope to see. I think the other trend we'd hope to see is increasing participation in the AP tests, perhaps, that people feel strong and confident about their Spanish, that they can take the AP tests. And I think maybe the third one that I still wish we had was something around fluency, conversational fluency. It's still my greatest regret that I've spent 4 to 6 years in studying German, and I can read it, but I cannot speak it. And I think many adults on the island went through languages like I did for college, and that's kind of where we are. And I wish we were more like Europe, where we had that fluency, bilingual conversational fluency. And that should be our aspiration in some sense, but I think indirectly we get this from, as was suggested, the last meeting was AP test participation.
I think some community members may get that opportunity as we have some incoming exchange students.
Oh,
The high
nice.
school.
Yeah.
I appreciate Ralph's suggestions. I think obviously understanding language contributes to global awareness, but there's so much more to it, and finding a way to capture that in some way I think would be really helpful. I don't think we're sending any of our kids through the elementary Spanish program to come out speaking Spanish. It's for so many other reasons, from what we heard from our administrators when they presented to us, which honestly increased my interest and support of the program. So hearing how they're seeing that it impacts. So whether, just throwing this out there in terms of students exploring other cultures, whether it's in, mission trips or vacations or even family things, things that they, as they topics that they're studying in history, projects they're choosing. It's hard to necessarily find a metric for that. I understand. I'm not saying to find one, but it would be, I think it's a good discussion to start having.
That was my thought as well. As we're 2 years into the program is really starting to find its feet. It's starting to find its balance and direction. I think now is a great time for us as a board to start thinking of what questions we might ask around that and lead that to our central administrative staff and our superintendent to figure out what those rubrics or metrics might look like. I think it's a great time to start thinking about it and maybe placing on our goal as a strategic goal to start deciding how we want to ask questions around that and measure it. But I think it's a great idea, and it's early in the program, so.
Thank you for chiming in, everybody, and there's no ask other than just for us to be reflective as we're going forward on other fundamentals and as we're thinking about the Spanish language program. If there are questions that might fit into here that can help measure its progress, success, because waiting 12 years for increased AP scores, it's a long time to wait. So, thank you for the discussion, though, on this.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Item C, Board Policy 1800 OE10, Instructional Program, Language Review. Any comments, discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. This is the part where we approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda as published.
Second?
And any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes 5-0. Next, we have the superintendent's report.
So just a few things this evening. This week, we had the final Superintendent Advisory Council for the year, and agenda items included a funding update, which seemed to be a consistent agenda item throughout the year, as things have always been ever-changing. So we added in, of course, the supplemental state budget and presented to that group the same presentation that had been done for the board. We gave them a capital projects update. We know that emergency and safety planning has been a hot topic, so to speak, this year, and so that generated some great discussion and some ideas and concerns that burbled up from the parents who sit on that advisory, in particular towards gaming, actually. Violent gaming there was some talk around a specific game that students are currently being involved in. We also did a learning services update on the new WSIF, which is the same report that the board had received. When we talked about the budget, of course, there was a lot of interest in that. There always is. It's ever-changing. And we did have a discussion centered around quality of teaching in classrooms and some discussion around restoration of things that have been previously reduced. in particular in instructional support in the form of coaches. And so that was discussed at that meeting, and how staff development and training for all staff is a real essential component as we move forward. Also this past week, I met with the students who were interested in being a student rep on the board. I know we had a lot of conversation about that tonight, but we had an open question period during first and second lunch at the high school on Tuesday. It was great to see so many students come out. I think we had 23 on the roster who signed in, and Vicki Puckett mentioned 3 or 4 others who had emailed her and said they couldn't be there, but they did have some questions. So the students were very thoughtful and very interested, and had some great questions. So I think we'll have a nice selection pool to look at. We'll be doing, their applications are due next week, and so we'll do kind of a paper screening, make sure they have everything, and then we're scheduled for June 13th to do the actual interviews. And so looking forward to meeting with students. Just for the board to know, I've reached out to the superintendent at Riverview, and they're looking at their board dates in August, which are on Tuesdays, and looking at could we go and have a workshop there with them. It would be a field trip for us to go out and perhaps do a workshop at the start of one of their meetings. So I have spoken with the superintendent, and he has the dates, but he hasn't been able to get back to me. It's kind of that time of year. So I will push on him again so we can get that date secure, but it will be in August in one of their meetings, from the first impression that I have. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, Director D'Souza? Oh,
So-
sorry, I should say our next item is board announcements, inquiries, and reports. So go ahead, Director D'Souza. Thank you.
So I'm the board representative on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. Donna covered it. I will also add that thank you very much for doing this. I think there was a round of accolades from the members of the SAC who appreciated the dialogue and the conversation that you've enabled in the Superintendent's Advisory Council. And you and your staff have done a great job keeping such a broad community base informed of what's happening, and done a great job taking their feedback as well. And it's been a good bi-directional discussion, so I think people feel a lot of value in attending and hearing what's happening in our schools. So thank you very much for what you've done with that. I do look forward to our June discussion offsite on our strategy discussion that we continue. So I think Tracy's been leading this with Donna to help make this happen. I hope at that point, we've been discussing the fundamentals piecemeal and language updates piecemeal to date. I hope in the June strategy review we can take an opportunity to discuss our metrics and how we want to view the fundamentals, how we focus on them, which ones are our priorities, which ones are lessened a little bit, and how they integrate with our school improvement plans in the June retreat. So that's my suggestion as one topic for the June retreat. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Janine Upton?
Okay, so it's been a busy week. Today was the final meeting for Mercer Island PTA Council's Advocacy Committee. They're setting up some dates to meet over the summer to continue work on certain subjects. Obviously, school safety was a big concern, looking into budgets, technology in the classrooms. I think some questions came up around that, around cyberbullying and cybersecurity. And I sent them in Andreev's direction for questions about that, which is awesome. But it's been great catching up and kind of continuing my work in a different capacity on that committee, because I've been a part of that committee for a couple of years now. So, yeah. Also, yesterday, President Drinkwater and I attended the Equity Conference from the boardroom to the classroom, hosted by WASA, the Association of Washington School Principals, and WASDA. which was a really fascinating event. It was great to be there. I got to hear Dr. Robin DiAngelo speak twice, because I did the breakout session and she delivered a keynote, which now I understand why so many people are excited to hear her speak. And it continued to drive home for me our mission and how equity needs to be embedded in every aspect of what we do in our policies here at this level, directly to the classroom, to ensure that every student has access to the tools and resources that they need. And there were some really deep, and I would even use the term courageous conversations that happened, that we were encouraged to have there. So I appreciate spending that time with you again. This is our second or third equity conference that we've done together, and I look forward to continuing this work. Trying to think about it, it's the end of the year, so everyone's so busy. There's so much to close up, and kids are excited. I did want to circle back and try to be pretty surface about the last special meeting we had, the linkage session with the City Council. I walked away with that with a few ideas. I want to do a hat tip to Councilman Bassett. I think he posed an interesting question about what we value and what we prioritize in the district. And I think that opened up some different possibilities. And so I began digging, as I am wont to do, and trying to think of directions we could go. I had considered possibly having some of us break into a subcommittee to write a statement of intent or a resolution specifically around mental health and counseling and all of that. I considered maybe starting a subcommittee to explore our current investment in mental health care with our students and our student body through curriculum, through social emotional learning, through health, through our nurse departments, through all of that, because I know that we have this huge investment in our district around the mental health of our students, the physical health, and the school climate. And then I hunted in and found and pulled out Board Policy 1007 and 1007P, which is specifically something that we can activate to appoint 2 members of our board to a committee, inviting 2 members of the City Council to join in to work outside of our linkage sessions and our regular board meetings to try to come to some sort of a conclusion. So there's all these options on the table of what we could do, and then I think I found myself into page 50-something from the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, hunting down exactly how many point lists of counselors we get allocated by 400 students, and I realized, you know what? I've really delved deep into operations at this point, and this is not what I'm here to do. With that said, I think, at least on my behalf, it's very clear that I support the mental health counselors. And not just the mental health counselors, but all of the work that Youth and Family Services done. And I think every aspect of their work needs to be protected. I think, however, we, as representatives on the board, can partner with our partners at the City Council. I think that really helps not only every student in our district, but every citizen within our community. And so, while I'm certainly open to activating Board Policy 1007 and working closely, I also really trust our subject matter experts, our superintendent, as well as the city manager, and the staffs that report to them to really look at this with that lens of equity, to look into our budgets and to see how we can protect these services and continue to move them forward. And I'm certainly willing to partner with them on that and supporting them and finding out just how we can save these programs, protect them, and hopefully one day find permanent, dedicated funding for them. So I'm going to float that out there and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Lurie?
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say today. It's just by chance that I'm following Director Janini Upton's comments. I left our linkage session feeling, frankly, not great. It wasn't a great tone, and it felt like it just felt like a lot of finger pointing towards, the board, our district, and our employees who work on behalf of our kids. I wanted to start by expressing my appreciation for this board and our leadership team and our teachers and administrative staff that work so hard every day with the sole purpose of doing what's best for our kids. I think that we need to remain strong in our determination to make sure that mental health is funded, well funded, and make sure that there's an understanding that the state at this point in time, even though we probably disagree, see mental health services, the state does not consider mental health services basic education. We can't go run a levy for mental health services. If we could, we would have long ago and not kept waiting as our budget for that ends, I believe, December 31st, 2018. And after that, as of right now, our mental health counselors in the schools are not funded. Unfortunately, we have to, the reason we voted and supported the letter to the city council is because we can't do it. We're not asking them to do something that we could do. So one of the questions I often am, probably one of the first questions I'm asked when I run into friends and friends who I might not see very often, how's the school board work going? And it's always with a smile, it's great. The board is so supportive. We have really great discussions. We don't always agree, but I think we make each other better. And I just am grateful for that. You know, as everyone knows, this is a big learning curve, but I appreciate the respectful way that we all challenge each other, and I think make all our decisions so that we can lift each and every student to their full potential.
Thank you. Director Jorgensen.
Let's see. Appreciate everybody's comments. I won't be, I won't reiterate them, although I agree with them. Let's see. I hope the city considers our letter. I hope it considers a semi-permanent solution that the community will support. I also do want to address one thing, and that is something I think perhaps we could ask the president of the board to do, and maybe we could have a subcommittee look into this as well. I have brought up a couple times this Best Start for Kids program that the county as well as Mercer Island passed, that my best calculation is we as Mercer Island taxpayers are paying about $2 million into it a year for the next 6 years, and right now we're not getting anything out of it. And we do have kids at risk. We do have, and so given that school districts, I think there's at least 12, if not 14 school districts in our county that currently receive funds. And given that we've been asking the city and we're trying to be as efficient with the funds, I think it's also our responsibility to perhaps reach out to King County to see if there's a way for them to fund Mercer Island School District's mental health counselors, or MIYFS. We certainly, you know, I think all of us here are in favor of progressive taxation, but a taxation which we're paying, which we're getting nothing back, doesn't seem like a sustainable model as well. And I think most people would agree. So there's a couple avenues we could go. I think it would be interesting if our board president and our superintendent could bring this up at a leadership meeting and see if perhaps a joint letter could be written on behalf of the city council and the school board to King County. I have mentioned this to one of our state legislators, and they seemed very eager to pursue that as a way to bring some money to this situation. Now, I do want to couch this that I don't think this is A, sustainable necessarily coming from them, and B, it's not going to be in the numbers that we need. So this should not take away anything from the letter we've written to the city. But I think it's our responsibility to reach out and see if we can get some of those funds. And in a way that does not create a burden on staff to write grants. It seems like MIYFS, our relationship with the city, shows a best model, and it seems like there should be enough evidence that we're putting our own money into it, getting some money contributed. That's kind of the goal. So one is the leadership, and perhaps we'll just leave it there, and then you can come back and then see if we should reach out to legislators based on your conversation with the city leadership. And please feel free to agree, disagree right now if you want to, or
Okay.
comment.
Did you want to, I saw you reaching for something. Was that just your computer? Okay. Well, thank you. Like, you've all given me lots to think about. So I want to acknowledge Director Jeannie Upton's comment, too, about the potential for calling up that policy that we have, that we could have a smaller group of our board and the city council meet together. And that's something I have thought about, but I want to think more about. And what I'm trying to do in this whole process is figure out ways that we can be collaborative. And when the tone sounds more competitive, I want to make sure we're pulling it to be more collaborative. And so that is my intent, because we need to work together for all our citizens, and our kids are a huge part of that. So that's where I'm going with that. And I hear you, Director Jorgensen, about bringing that idea up as well. And I do think it is worth talking about further with the city and seeing if there's some mutual interest in that to get that done as well. And then my report. I had a busy week too. On Monday, I had the privilege of going to the Alliance for Gun Responsibility luncheon, and that was an amazing event, and they raised a lot of money. You may have read about some of the big donors for that in the newspaper regarding the initiative that they're helping sponsor to promote gun safety, which was in line with so much of what we wrote in our resolution back in, was it March? So it was very interesting to hear all of that, and I'm sure there'll be more news about that initiative this summer. They're going to be looking for signatures to get something on the ballot for November. And one of the things that it included, which I think we all feel pretty strongly about, is, and our city may too, is the idea of having more laws around safe gun storage, and that keeping weaponry out of the hands of anyone who should not be authorized to be using it, especially our young people, whether that would be to use it in a dreaded shooting at a school, or whether that would be in the more common circumstances of using it for suicide. And so I think we're all interested in seeing reduction in those numbers. And so if there's something that we can do about it, I'll bring more news about that when I get it, and I'm sure you'll all be following it as well. I also went to the Equity Conference that Director Jeannie Upton referenced, and for the highlight for me was seeing Robin DiAngelo. She, as I told her after the her talk, I said, you fed me what I was hungry for. What she said was what I was looking for at that conference. And maybe it was just some way of relating to her that helped me move my own knowledge forward, and that's what I was looking for, because I've been working on this topic for a long time in my own self, and I wanted to move my own self forward. And so that was really helpful. And I've got a long reading list for the summer of things I want to read based on many of the events at the conference and the speakers. And one of the other highlights was seeing Ben Abali speak, who I knew had done training in our district, and I hadn't seen him speak in person. And so I was treated to that as well, and that did not disappoint either. That was a really awesome talk. So I'm glad that we've had him do trainings, and I hope that we'll have further trainings in our district that include people like them. So let's see. Speaking of collaboration, not competition, I am looking forward to one competition, and that is the softball challenge that we threw out there. And I think that's a really appropriate and fun idea, and I look forward to hearing more about that. And I'm not sure who's spearheading that. Is that up to me?
You or I could, either one,
Okay.
or the superintendent could.
It will certainly be a topic at our next leadership meeting,
Okay.
along with a couple of the others that were mentioned.
Sounds good. Okay. And I'll go make sure I get some practice in before then. It's been a while since I played softball. All right, let me just there was one other event I went to last Friday, and that was the last PAC of the year at West Mercer Elementary, and that's been a pleasure to serve in as a liaison for that school, and I was particularly impressed with the idea that Carol Best brought forward, and that was to, she was considering and wanted feedback from the group about whether to include an equity role of a person whose role would be to really focus their lens on equity issues at West Mercer. And so that was given a thumbs up, and I thought that was a great idea to do at that school and at other schools if they're interested. And that's all I have for now. So next we have an executive session that we're going to do a closed session to review the performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)G, and I expect it to take about 45 minutes. And so that would bring us back here at 8:40 to reconvene this meeting. No final action will be taken in the executive session, and then we'll come back around 8:40 to adjourn this meeting. Yes. So actually, I need a motion to move into executive session.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, and we will now move into executive session. Thank you.